It's simply not possible to manage all our processes. There are hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of them. Even hundreds would likely be too difficult. So we need to make choices. We need a way to determine which are the high impact processes. We need some selection criteria. Let's explore that a little more. If we can't actively manage all our processes, then we need a logical and effective way to at least come up with a viable long list. How many processes are there? How many processes are in your organisation? Well, the short answer is a lot. Let's do some numbers. Let's assume for this exercise that every process has 5 sub-processes and that we've got 3 highest level core processes. So here we're only talking about core processes. So we can see that the number of processes is going to increase dramatically, isn't it? By the time we get to level 4, we're showing there that we've got nearly 400 core processes in those 3 levels, and that's just the core, and the aggregate of management and support processes would be multiples of that. So we very quickly get to lots and lots of processes. So what does that mean for us? Already we're starting to see the reality that we couldn't possibly manage them all. So we are faced with this kind of choice. Do we want to know not much about all of our processes, or maybe a little bit about many of our processes, or maybe a lot about just some of our processes? And they're the only options we've got. We can't, you might be thinking, well, it would be good to know a lot about all of them. I don't think that's even possible. So it's the third option there, knowing a lot about some of our processes, that I think we inevitably end up with. Even if that wasn't our conscious decision, there are resource limitations that takes us there. So we need to know a lot about some. Some? Which ones? That's what this video is all about. So which processes should we actively manage? That's the key question, because if we're not actively managing the right processes, how can we get the best results? That begs another question, of course. What do we mean by manage, and in particular actively manage? Well, that's what this whole Process Insights video series has been about, so I'm not going to try and rehash the 39 other videos, but just a very quick summary, and there are videos attached to all of the images that I'll show now. If we're going to actively manage our processes, we need a process architecture, a hierarchical view of the processes. I'm showing them here in PowerPoint pictures, of course, and that's not the way to manage processes. That's just a presentation technique. This is a hospital. You can see that we're showing 4 highest level core processes. The top one, care for patients. We could drill down. Here we're showing another 2. So here are 3 levels of process. So we need to have this level of understanding about our process architecture, about the set of processes that are delivering our products and services and experiences. And then for the ones that we do select from that set, from the architecture, we want to have a pretty detailed body of knowledge about that process. I call that here the Process Management Information Library. It's a kind of management record of the process. What is this process? How is it performing? How could it perform? How should it perform? All of those questions. What are its issues? What's happening in the environment? What's changing? It's really quite a profound body of knowledge about the process that we're trying to actively manage. And we can't do that management unless we've got that knowledge. Otherwise we'd just be guessing. And then active management of a process comes like this in that top layer there. We're talking about creating the process architecture, identifying the processes, and then the other 2 steps, which are going to be iterative. We're going to define what good would look like, what is the performance, and then we're going to track against that performance, looking for performance gaps, which might be opportunity gaps or a problem gap, and the problem might be emergent or it might be an existing gap, and then we make decisions about that, about whether we're going to close it or not, and if we've decided it needs to be closed, then we'll get on and do that, and then we'll keep measuring and testing to make sure that that's happened. So we're doing a lot when we're managing a process properly, in my view. So the good news is that we don't have to manage the thousands of processes, even if we wanted to. So I think about it like this, in this the process priority pyramid, I call this. If you look at the bottom level there, we've got all the unknown processes. I mean, it's processes all the way down, isn't it? So it says there's thousands, but really it's kind of tens of thousands if you wanted to go down deep enough. A level up, we start getting into the real world. Now we've got named processes. So I would think of these as the processes named in a process architecture. That'll grow over time, but, of the order of 300. My experience is putting process architectures together with organisations. If we include management core and supporting processes, and we're down 3 levels, it's somewhere between 250 and 350 processes. So 300 order of magnitude. Now, some of those processes, only some, we'll document, and that's classic modelling, of course, but all other documentation as well related to the process, as we were just looking at before. And it's documented for a reason, not just because it's fun to do. So we might be automating, or there's some regulatory requirement, or we use it for training purposes. So we need a good reason to document, because that's a major expense, isn't it, that we spend on modelling and doing other forms of process documentation. And how many is that? Well, I think it's of the order of 100. Over time, it might build into more than that, but I think it's that kind of ballpark anyway. And then we come to the high impact processes. These are the ones that we're actually going to actively manage. And 20 or 30 processes is quite a lot to actively manage. Maybe if you're getting good at it, you might be doing 40 or 50, but I don't think you're ever doing 300, and not even 100. That would be a very heavy load. Props to you if you can do that and do it properly. But, even if most organisations got to be actively managing 5 processes and doing it well, that might be a lot more than they're currently doing. So the good news is we do only need to manage the high impact processes. But of course that begs the question, how are we going to select those HIPs, those high impact processes? And we need to have a way of doing that that's reasonably flexible and comes up with a good result. Now, what do we mean by high impact? That would be a good place to start, wouldn't it? So I think of that as it's a process that has a high improvement potential because there's a problem, or because there's an opportunity to do something different, or there will be a high impact if that process had poor performance. And you might find both of those apply, or just one. So this is what we mean by high impact. And that's a bit vague, I understand that. But in a particular organisation looking at a set of processes, we can usually identify that relatively quickly. So what about some other criteria considerations? So what we're looking here is to come to a point where we can say, here's a set of criteria by which we can use to select our high impact processes. And we'll get to those, and spoiler alert, there are going to be 3 of them in my list anyway. So what do we need to think about? So the HIP list will change over time. Processes can move up and down in that pyramid, of course, and what's a high impact now may not be a high impact later, so it doesn't have to, we're not setting something in stone. Obviously HIPs will be organisational specific. The Goldilocks Principle, do you understand Goldilocks Principle? It simply says we need not too many, not too few, but just the right number. And that will also be organisational dependent. Context is going to be important, isn't it? What's happening in the organisation, what's happening in the ecosystem in which the organisation works. And then we always want to keep it as simple as possible, but no simpler, as the man said. I think as process practitioners, our job is to make management simpler, not more complicated. So we don't need to overcomplicate things. We just need to make it easier for managers to manage. That's what we're trying to do. So I've thought about this a lot, and I've had all sorts of different views about how to do it. Anything from, just pick a bunch, get people to vote. Certainly when you're starting, probably not hard to pick the first few. And I probably started out on this kind of journey thinking, wouldn't it be nice if there was some kind of algorithmic way of doing this? You sort of at least notionally feed your process architecture into something and out pops a list of high impact processes. It's not like that. There are no silver bullets. But I think we've come up with some useful criteria, and this is the 3 that I've got, and I'll go through each of those in turn in a moment. So we're going to select all the level 2 core processes. There will be some processes that are special or in some way unique to the organisation, and then I've allowed for a wildcard entry. Let's have a look at each of these in turn. So all of the level 2 processes, I think, this is the main selection criteria, at least for the long list, the initial long list. And the level 2 processes here, this is back to our hospital. Care for patients is the highest level process, and all the yellow ones there are level 2 processes. So I think we can just say, by default, include all of the level 2 core processes. All of them. Then we can say, for our second criteria, is there anything in management or support that is particularly important for us or unique to us? Unique in inverted commas, because it won't be unique across the world, but special to us, something that... So we take this is the extract from the hospital again. So you see a support process there, minimise infection risk. Obviously that's a pretty important process in an organisation. I'm the process guy, so the management process up there, improved performance, which is in all of my process architectures, I think that's important as well. I mean, that's the process of process management and improvement. So, of course, I'd want to put that in every time. And then the third, selected. So we've said selected for the second criteria there. We're selecting them from management and support. So what does that mean? I mean, maybe we need some guidance about that. So it's in some sense it's unique, or it has great performance potential, or there's lots of activity going on around it at the moment. Maybe the impact of failure would be enormous. We just can't let it fail. Often there might be some just straight regulatory imperative. You just have to manage this. It's part of regulatory compliance. Or maybe there's something about the process that's changing internally in the organisation or in the context. So we're not going to pick lots and lots of processes from that second criteria, but we'll use these kinds of selection terms to just get, maybe it's, might be a handful at most. So we're not going to pick the obvious ones that everybody has. We're just going to look for something that really should be included. So that's given us selections from core, management and support. And then as a third criteria, I've really just said here anything else that you think is really important. And how would you select that? Well, there might be a whole range of reasons for it. There's a whole bunch of them selected here to do with customer impacts or the number of staff involved. I'm just leaving this open, and I wouldn't see us selecting lots and lots here. We're getting a long list, but it's a shortish long list. We don't want 100 processes. We want 20 or 30, maybe something like that. But if there's something that stands out that really needs to be managed actively, at least in the short term, then this third criteria allows us to do that. Okay, so let's apply that here. Now, this applies it to university process architecture, and you can see those level 2 core processes with the ticks on them. We've selected all of those. And then criteria 2 might have picked out of support. Process down the bottom, manage student life cycle, pretty important for a university. And then engage alumni, also important university process that's different and unique to university world anyway. Then up the top there's a process that maybe it came out of criteria 3 because there's lots of change going on, for example. So there's a process up there called manage change. So that's given us 24 high impact processes. That's not too bad. We could get to that point with that initial long list, but at least now we're dealing with 24, not 200. So we could take some out. We could add some more through criteria 3 if we wanted to. And we've still got 24 or whatever we end up with, so we're not going to deal with all of those at once. That's too many. I'm always encouraging organisations, if you're just starting, to maybe pick 3 or 4 or 5 processes and get those under active management so you can learn how to do it and demonstrate it, etc. So the classic pain gain analysis, now you can apply that to 24. Now you might think, well, we could have done that to start with. Well, it's very hard to apply pain gain analysis to hundreds of processes, so we have to cull the field before we can actually do anything useful pain gain. And we've got our short list of HIPs now, the 24 from that example, and we're intending to actively manage all of them. What we're doing here now is just saying, okay, which ones are we going to start with? Are there limitations? You could think of them as limitations, but I think what I'm going to talk about here now are actually enablers, not limitations. So it's not a formula. There's no, just put it in one end of an algorithm and the list comes out the other end. That was never going to be true. And then there's all these things that you need, a process architecture and lots of engagement and discussion and debate. We need good governance. We need to be able to make decisions, but they're hardly limitations, are they? If we're in the process business, we need those anyway. So I don't think we've got limitations there. I think this is enablers. And as so often is the case when we're pulling together process-based management as a management philosophy in the organisation, the conversations and the arguments and debates that happen along the way are just as powerful as the outcomes. So let's bring all that together. We certainly need to focus and we need to prioritise. We can't be managing hundreds of processes in that active way. So we've got to make wise choices. We can't get optimum performance if we're improving the wrong processes. Is it 20 or 30 or 40 or 50? I think it's of that order in terms of number of high impact processes. Prove me wrong and manage 100 of them, but do it well and I'll be impressed. But I wouldn't start with that number. We can be very agile and flexible about the HIP list. We don't need to set it in concrete. As I say, an incremental rollout. Don't try and start with 30, start with 3. It's all under continuous review. And the point of the exercise, as always, is that we're delivering optimum PVBB. Check the video. Proven, valued business benefits. Benefits to the business, valued by the business, and proven with data about which there's no dispute. That's what it's all about, isn't it, when we're doing process-based management? management. It's about improving organisational performance in ways that delight everyone, and we've got no argument about what was actually delivered. I hope that was useful for you. Thanks for joining me for this Process Insight. How does your organisation decide which processes to prioritise for analysis and improvement? Please share any insights you can. More information about me and my work at my website. There's an introduction video about my work here on this channel, and the links are below. This is the 40th video in the Process Insight series, and I think that completes the set. I've set up playlists based on the 7 enablers to make them easy to access. I hope you find them useful. More videos to come later in a different format. You have my contact details, and I'd be delighted to connect. And thanks for sharing this time with me. If you'd like to continue the conversation, I'd love to hear from you.